Alright, so we're here checking out your assignment 8 project. It is the example from the book, so unfortunately I can't do any creativity points for that, but we will go over optimizing the animation that you do have here. So there are a couple things that we're going to work on to make our animation pop better. So right now, if we just go ahead and hit the play button just as it is, you'll see that's going pretty fantastically fast there. Your animation is only 1 second long, so it's a lot happening in a short amount of time. So we might want to kind of lengthen the timing there a little bit. Okay. Another important thing here is if we do scrub through the animation slowly using the timeline here, I'm just left-clicking and dragging along the timeline so I can see each frame. You can see this moment where the ball is actually dipping down underneath the floor at this point, okay, before it starts coming back up again, alright? So we want to alleviate that. Basically, the ball should not actually physically squish until it makes contact with the floor, alright? And that should happen, in this animation directly halfway through. So in this case, since we're working with frames 1 through 24, this is going to happen on frame 12, okay? So on frame 12, we'll have that squash, and that should also be the same frame that the ball begins touching the ground, or the frame immediately after the ball touches the ground, okay? So it won't squish down till it makes contact. So anything before here really shouldn't, the ball shouldn't be reaching the floor at this point, okay? And then after it bounces back up again, you can see it's squashed for just a moment and then it's immediately back to normal. Okay, it should take a little time for it to regain its shape, okay? And then the last little thing that we'll look at here is when the ball is squishing down, and we'll get a little technical here, we'll look at our channel box in the layer editor, alright? I'm going to work with that right over here to really see what our frames are telling us. Just when our ball squishes, we can see that scale X here we have set to 1, which is its regular size, okay? If we have it perfectly round, it's going to be set at 1, 1, and 1. When it's squishing right here on 12, we've got it set to 1, 0.6, and 1, okay? Now, the 0.6 is fine, so we are squashing it down in the Y direction, but the problem here is that if you have a ball that is a certain mass, okay, and you squash it down, you have to picture it kind of full of air. When you push down on the ball, pushing the air, you're also displacing air. So when you're pushing down on it, the air is going to want to expand outward towards the sides. Okay, it needs to go somewhere. It can't just disappear as you're pushing down on the ball. Alright, so it will actually expand outwards in other directions, okay, that have less pressure. When you put pressure on the top, it's going to expand around the sides. Alright? So basically what that translates to here is that whenever we squish this ball down, it's also going to round out, get larger in other directions, in this case the X and Z directions. Alright, so we'll put in here maybe something like 1.2 in the X and Z directions. Alright, and I'm just going to go ahead and grab all of those and just key select it. And I just did that by left click and dragging over these 3 guys right here, right click and hold, and then just selecting key selected, okay? So those are keyed now. I'm on frame 12, by the way. Alright, so that's going to start looking a little more realistic now that we've squashed it down appropriately, alright, and displaced that air. You can see it's still kind of hovering above the ground. So, you know, you can press space bar to change your views, and you have a lot of different views that you can look at things from. I'd suggest one of these right here. Okay, so I'm looking at it from the side at the moment. If we take a look here, you know, right down here is our plane. Okay, looks like it's just below our kind of center grid line. All right, and here's our ball. So at frame 12, it should be just touching this ground plane here. Okay, so I'm gonna move it down till it's just touching that ground plane, you know, and you can zoom in really close and get it perfect, but you know, this is probably good enough. So, you know, once I've done that, don't forget to go in here to your translate Y, all right, and key that, because otherwise if you flip-flop to another frame and come back, it's not going to be set correctly anymore. All right, so there we go. We've got it kind of where we want it to be on frame 12 at least. Now on frame 11, you know, and before that it's dipping down underneath, and really, you know, I don't think we'll really need frame 11 for this particular animation, so I'm actually going to just come to frame 11 here, and I am right-clicking and holding, and I'm going to cut that. Okay, and I'm also going to do that with frame 13. All right, I'm going to cut that as well, so that we're working with something a little more simple, where we've just got, well, I'm going to get rid of 2 over here as well, okay? So right now we're just working with 1, 12, and 24, okay? Now, during that process, some things have shifted around with your final frame. That's simply because some of the input that we had on frame 13, when we got rid of that, was no longer carried over to frame 24, okay? So we can easily just reset our frame 24. We know that we want our ball to be perfectly round again by the time it's at the top of this arc. Okay, it's just going to be a nice round perfect ball. So we're going to make the scale 1, 1, and 1. Okay, that's going to make this beautiful, perfect sphere. Alright, and we'll make sure that we grab those and key them. Okay. Now, you'll notice that the translate Y is correct. Alright, so that's all fine. So let's see what we have now. Got it going down, squishing, and coming back up again. Right? It looks like we also got some unusual input here on frame 1 as well. So again, double check that. Make sure you get it perfectly round, 1, 1, and 1 on frame 1. Key those guys. Okay, so you notice that the ball is still dipping pretty dramatically below where we want it to be, right here, okay? And that's something that we can actually adjust quite easily using our graph editor. This is a perfect moment to use our graph editor, alright? So we'll come to Window, Animation Editors. We're going to open up our graph editor. And this is going to give us kind of a visual representation of what our ball is doing in space, right? And we can also manipulate these. So right now what we're dealing with, the ball dipping down underneath the floor, has to do with translate Y, right? That's our up and down translation tool, okay, translate Y. So we can actually come in here to the graph editor, and we can, with our sphere selected, we can choose translate Y right here, and that's going to isolate that so that we can get a better look at it, kind of see what's going on with our translate Y. So you can kind of see this curve is really going to follow what the ball is doing in our scene window over here, okay? So, you know, it starts up high, right up here at the top of the bounce, okay? It's going down. You can watch this red line as we scrub along. Again, I'm just clicking and dragging on the timeline to scrub. And we can see right here where it's, going underneath the floor, it's going too far. We know on frame 12 we have it set exactly at the floor height, okay? That's our keyframe right there. And then we can see it traveling back up to the top of its arc again here, okay? So the problem lies in this a bit right here where it's flowing underneath the floor and we don't want it to do that, okay? So instead of trying to come over here and change things and, and key them a bunch, we can actually just keep the keyframes we have now and change these curves so that they're not curving in this crazy way anymore. So the first thing that we want to do to change this curve is actually called breaking a tangent, alright? So you can see this is all one smooth flowing connected curve at the moment. We're actually going to break this one long flowing curve into two separate curves that can be manipulated separately from one another, okay? So I'm going to grab this just by marquee selecting, okay? I'm just clicking and dragging to select that, okay? It'll light up pink and yellow dot and white line. It's very nice. Then I'm just going to hit this little button right up here, okay? Looks like a little V, and it's called break tangents. As soon as I do that, it's not going to look like much has happened, but you'll notice that one of these little handles has turned blue, okay? The other one stayed purple. This is a sign that my tangent is now broken and we're ready to move this curve over here on this side freely from this one, alright? So I'm just going to come up to Edit, Transformation Tools, and I'm going to use my Move Keys tool, alright? I'll just click on that guy. And what I can do now is I can actually click on this little blue handle, alright? And I can now move it by clicking and dragging up and down. You can see my scene adjusting in real time here. So what we want is it no longer dipping under the floor. We want it to actually come down in a smooth arc, hit the floor, and then travel back up again in another smooth arc, okay? So I can also grab the other handle over here, this pink one, and I can move this as well to adjust things. I have to be very careful when I'm doing this that I don't overshoot the other side, okay? Because this is going to make the ball appear like it's floating in the air for a moment, alright? It's going to look really unnatural. So we want to make sure we just have these nice curves. It's not going over this final keyframe. It's not going under this middle keyframe, which represents the floor. Alright? Should just look just like that. Like a nice little V shape. Alright? So once we do that, let's check how this has affected our animation. We'll watch it over here, okay? So here goes the ball, hits the floor, and comes back up again. Alright. That's looking pretty good. Let's also check our scale values and see how those are going, okay? So here's my scale X. Now, you might notice, if you look carefully, that the ball is starting to stretch outwards before we actually hit the ground, okay? And that's something we don't want. We don't want that stretching outwards to happen until that force is applied, alright, when it hits the ground. So we're also going to adjust this in the graph editor, okay? So at the moment, this is happening in a smooth curve, when really we want it to just retain that value of 1 all the way up until our keyframe, and then we want it to suddenly flip-flop to this 1.2 value, okay? And at the moment, it's just gradually changing to that 1.2 value from 1, okay? So you can see it here, where it's happening, where you've got this along different frames. It's just gradually changing. We don't want that. We want it to be more like our scale Y and our scale Z, where they're staying at 1 all the way up until frame 12 and they suddenly change. Okay? So what we can do to achieve that is just grab these, all of them, okay? Just clicking and dragging. And we're going to change this. At the moment, it's using a mode called auto tangents, right? Which just creates smooth curves automatically for you. And we want to change it to something called step tangents, all right? This is going to look like little stairs, so I can just click on step tangents, right? Now, it might be a little difficult to see the difference at the moment, right? So, I'll show you how you can kind of change this so that you can see things a little better. If you hold down Command, Shift, and your right mouse button, click and drag left and right, you can change how this looks. Okay, and you can zoom in with that middle mouse scroll wheel. And you can begin to kind of see things better. So this is what it looked like before, all right? And now that we put it into step mode, this is what it looks like now. Okay, quite different. And the Command Shift and hold down the right mouse button, that was for Mac. If you are on a PC, it will be Control Shift and right click and hold, okay? So it's similar controls. So now that we have it in step mode like this, the value is staying at 1. You can see 1 right here on the graph. Value is going to stay at 1 all the way until it gets to frame 12, and it's going to suddenly jump to 1.2, okay? And then what we have going on after that is that it's staying at 1.2 until it gets all the way back up to the top and it's popping back into 1, which, you know, is really not what we want. For that, we want something a little more smooth, okay? Because although it's going to suddenly change shape when it hits that ground, comes into impact with the ground, it's going to come back to this round shape gradually, okay? So we can change this area just by grabbing this tangent right here, and we can actually change this back to auto tangent, all right, or to a nice smooth curve, okay? Okay, so I just grabbed both of those and hit my auto tangent button here, which looks like a pretty bell curve with the letter A underneath, okay? So now this is happening as a nice smooth curve, okay? So you can see the effect here. Everything's staying nice and round, squishing out, and then gradually it's going back to its original shape, okay? That's what we get happening there. And you can see on scale Z we have a very similar situation going on, okay? And scale Y as well. So that's looking good. Our animation is already looking a lot better. It's not going through the floor anymore. It's looking a lot more natural, okay? There are a couple other things that you can do with it just to add some extra oomph to your animation. For example, you know, the ball is probably not going to stay squashed like this for quite so long, okay? It's actually going to more likely stretch out a little bit as it regains speed as it's traveling up. So somewhere around maybe frame 16 or 15 or so, we're actually going to stretch the ball, okay? So we've squashed it down. Now we're going to stretch it before it reaches the top of its arc here, okay? And it's going to help our animation out a lot. All right, so to stretch the ball, I'm pretty much going to do the opposite of what I did when I squashed it. meaning the scale Y is going to go up. All right, I'm going to put 1.2 in there for now. And your scale X and your scale Z are going to go down. Okay, that's probably a little too dramatic. So I'll boost those guys up just a little bit. Maybe I'll even put that as 1.1. All right, so you know, nothing too crazy going on there. So once I've done that, I want to make sure that I do key these. Okay, and let's see what we've got now. So it's coming down, squishing, stretching up as it's going back up, and then slowly it comes back to its original shape at the top of its bounce. Okay, squishing down, kind of ricocheting up, and returning to its original shape. Now it's still going really, really fast, so it's quite difficult to see that any of that is there. So we may want to actually make this animation a little bit longer. Now we can do that, but we have enough frames. This tells us how many frames are in our animation. Okay, we have 48 frames in our animation, but we're only looking at 24 of them right now. Okay, this little slider down at the bottom here allows us to slide through our animation. Okay, so we've got all these frames over here that we're not even using at the moment. If we want to look at more frames at once, we can change this number to whatever we want. In this case, I'm going to change it to 48. That's going to allow us to look at all of the frames in our project at once. Okay, so here's all 48 frames, and I decided, you know, this is going by too quick. I want this animation to be twice as long. Instead of reanimating the ball, I already have everything that I really need. So I can just move these frames appropriately, okay? So I can actually just come to frame 24 here, which is going to be my new frame 48. I can hold shift and click, and it's going to light up all red like this, all right? I can now middle mouse, click and drag over the center of this frame. And when I do that, I can actually change the position of my keyframe. When I click off, you can see there's my little red tick mark. This is my old frame 24, which I've now moved to be frame 48. Everything up here that I've set is still the same. It's just sitting in a different spot on my timeline. Now, I can also hold shift, click and drag. I can even select multiple frames at a time, okay? And then again, I can just come over to the middle area here and middle mouse click and drag to move these wherever I want them to be. Now, my new frame 12 in this case would be frame 24, okay? Halfway between 1 and 48, I've got frame 24, so I can just click and drag those guys, move them over, click off. You know, I may also want to adjust the timing here on my stretch as well and move that out a little bit, okay? Okay, so now I've effectively just made my animation twice as long. So it's going to go a little slower, all right? Now, we do have a little bit of funky stuff going on right here at the end, which, you know, we couldn't really see before because of the fact that we were viewing our animation so quickly. Kind of comes out now. We can see it a little better, right? So this is another case, just like when our animation was going too far down, it was going underneath the floor. In this case, it's going too far up, okay, and it's actually rising up above the top of the bounce, okay? So again, this is just another job for our graph editors. We can come up to Window, Animation Editors, Graph Editor. Let's look at our Translate Y. Now, when we changed our view before using Command Shift and right mouse clicking and dragging, we squished this in a bunch, so it's hard to see. So we can just use that same technique to pull this out again. All right. Got some pretty dramatic overshoot happening here, you can see, when we change things around. So we can again just adjust this very easily by just coming in and selecting these guys, clicking and dragging. Okay, selecting that handle there, clicking and dragging, so we get this nice smooth bounce curve. Okay, so let's try our animation again. And it's looking much better and bouncing really nicely. Okay, so that's all there is for the video today. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions about anything that we went over in the video. And happy animating!